"You can't sit with us. Mommy said you're just a useless old freeloader." My 9-year-old granddaughter Lily said that in front of the entire family, right in the middle of my son Michael's birthday dinner. What hit me wasn't the insult itself, but the sound of my own child laughing at it. I stood up, trying to keep my back straight, even as my chest tightened like someone was squeezing it. No one apologized. No one stopped her. That night, Michael texted me a single sentence. "Mom, tomorrow is the usual payment deadline." And I replied, "Handle it yourself." They didn't know that, from that moment on, I had opened the door to the biggest reversal of their lives. If you're still listening, tell me where you're watching from. Every comment you leave is another mark in this journey. And if this story has touched you, don't forget to hit like, so it can reach even further. My name is Evelyn Brooks. I'm 66 years old and live in a quiet little town in Oregon. My white wooden house with the wide front porch is where I raised my 2 boys and where I once imagined I would grow old peacefully, surrounded by the laughter of family. But it turns out everything I spent my whole life building could collapse in an instant created by the very people I loved most. That day was Michael's 41st birthday. The little blonde boy I once carried is now a grown man with a wife, a child, and a family I always thought I still belonged to. I had woken up at 6 a.m. to prepare the dinner. I roasted honey-glazed chicken, Michael's childhood favorite, made coleslaw, and baked a red velvet cake using the exact recipe he once said was the best in America. I cleaned every corner of my kitchen, polished the silverware, and laid out a navy blue tablecloth, his favorite color since high school. I poured my whole heart into that meal, not because I wanted gratitude, but because I loved my son, loved this family so much that I sometimes forgot I also deserved respect. At exactly 3 p.m., Michael and Vanessa's shiny black SUV pulled into my driveway. I smiled, my heart fluttering with a fragile hope that maybe today would feel warm, like the old days. But the first person to step out, Vanessa, my daughter-in-law, shattered that hope immediately. She lowered her sunglasses, scanned my house like she was assessing a free temporary shelter. "Oh, wow, you actually cleaned today," she said, her voice cold even though her lips curved into a polite smile. I simply replied, "I always keep the house clean. You just don't notice." Vanessa didn't care. She walked inside as if entering a convenience store, eyes glued to her phone, leaving Michael to carry everything. Lily, only 9, walked in last, shaking her brown curls and giving me a look no child should have, unless someone taught her to. I bent down and opened my arms. "Hi, Lily, sweetheart. Come give Grandma a hug." She stepped back half a step, wrinkling her nose as if I had offered her something dirty. I swallowed that sharp, stinging feeling in my chest and stood up. "It's okay," I told myself. Kids can be unpredictable. But I was wrong. I was naive to the point of foolishness. When we sat down at the table, Vanessa crossed her legs like a queen, not lifting a finger to help. Michael looked at his phone more than he looked at me. The only sound was the faint clinking of silverware in my warm, quiet kitchen. I tried to start a conversation. "Lily, how's school? Grandma misses you." Without looking up, she replied, "Mommy says Grandma asks too many questions." I heard Vanessa chuckle, and Michael gave an awkward, embarrassed smile, but said nothing. He didn't correct his daughter. He didn't ask his wife to be respectful. Not one word. When I brought out the red velvet cake, candles glowing on top, I hoped the atmosphere would soften. I thought the moment of blowing out candles might spark some warmth. I thought my son would look at me the way he used to, as the woman who tucked him into bed every night. I thought wrong again. Just as I sat down to join them in singing, Lily suddenly stood up, turned to me and said clearly, "You can't sit with us. Mommy said you're just a useless old freeloader." The cake nearly slipped from my hands. Vanessa burst out laughing. But what tore me apart was Michael's quiet laugh, the one I would hear again in my sleep for nights afterward. The room spun. I stood up slowly so I wouldn't collapse. Good, I told myself. Don't cry in front of them. Don't let them see you hurt. I walked into the kitchen. Before the door even swung shut, I heard them go right back to laughing, talking, as if they hadn't just shattered someone's heart in the same room. I leaned against the sink, my hands gripping the edge until my knuckles turned white. On the wall, there was a photo of Michael at 4 years old, smiling brightly in his little beach outfit. I stared at that picture and wondered when my son had become a stranger. That night, after everyone left, I cleaned each plate smeared with frosting, each glass with their fingerprints on it. My house went quiet again, the kind of quiet that makes an older woman feel alone. My phone buzzed. Michael, Mom, tomorrow is the usual payment deadline. The usual payment, meaning the money I had quietly wired into his account every month for 3 years, so he could keep up appearances with Vanessa, so his family never lacked anything, so Lily could attend private school, so Vanessa could carry a new designer handbag every season. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I typed 3 words, handle it yourself. And for the first time in 15 years as a single mother, I felt peaceful, not because I saw my future, but because I finally saw theirs. I, Evelyn Brooks, had lived my whole life for my children. I once believed that's what a mother must do, but that birthday dinner woke me up. Love is not meant to be stepped on. I turned off the living room lights and walked up the creaky stairs to my bedroom. Each step echoed softly like the sound of a chapter closing. No one knew that as I sat by my window looking out at my winter garden. I was already thinking one thing: if they see me as a burden, then let's see how long they last without that burden. And I made a silent promise to myself they would have to relearn their entire lives from the very lesson they began with ungratefulness. I didn't know that night that this small decision would trigger a domino effect, shaking the entire family, toppling illusions, revealing truths even I never expected. But I knew one thing for certain. That day was the day I stopped being dismissed and started reclaiming my life. The next morning, I woke just as the first light hit the pine trees behind my yard. I still heard Lily calling me a freeloader in my head, but strangely, the sting had hardened into something like a thin sheet of ice, cold but strong, protective. I put on my sweater, went downstairs, brewed my black coffee, and sat at my usual spot by the window, the place where every morning I watched the world move slowly. But that morning, the world didn't move slowly at all. My phone buzzed nonstop, tearing right through the quiet. I knew who it was, but I let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. On the 5th call, I finally answered. Michael's voice exploded through the line, shaky and frantic. Mom, why is my account negative? The bank says I'm short almost $3,000. Vanessa's car won't take gas. Her card got declined. Mom, what's happening? I took a sip of coffee, watching the steam drift across the window. Oh, are you sure you called the right person? I'm just the useless old freeloader. What do I have to do with this? Michael went silent. I heard his breathing quicken. Then, from somewhere behind him, a sharp shout. Michael, you said your mom put money on my card. They declined it. I had to leave my coffee. It was Vanessa, sharp, shrill, panicked. I smiled faintly. I had never been this calm. You heard her, I said gently. A burden has no financial obligations. Mom, this isn't funny. The house payment is due. Bills are piling up. Oh, the house? I interrupted. The one I paid 80% of the down payment for? A gulp. Footsteps. Maybe he was walking to a quieter corner. Mom, what are you saying? You paid for us? I walked to my wooden cabinet, took out a red folder and set it on the table. Michael, do you know what I've been paying for these past 3 years? I pulled out each document, reading them like a grocery list. The mortgage, the cars, insurance, Lily's private school tuition, both of your credit cards, roof repairs, summer camp, your Colorado trip last year. The line went dead silent. I did all that because I love you, because I didn't want Vanessa to look down on you, but I see now I was completely wrong. Michael stammered. Mom, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you say anything? Why should I? You're a grown man, Michael. You have a family, responsibilities. I thought helping a little would give you confidence. I paused, Turns out I only fed a habit. Just then, Vanessa grabbed the phone. Lily is just a kid. She didn't mean it. Why are you blowing this up? I laughed. A short, sharp laugh. Kids repeat what they hear. Children don't come up with insults for their grandmothers on their own. Vanessa went silent immediately. I continued. Do you know why Lily spoke that way, Vanessa? Because she heard it at home. Because you said it. Because Michael didn't correct you. I don't blame Lily, but I will not tolerate the disrespect of adults. Michael's voice returned, desperate. Mom, the bank is really going to take the house. I need you to... No, Michael. This time, my voice was stone. Yesterday, you watched your daughter insult me. You laughed. When a mother is treated that way, no one has the right to ask her for anything. I heard him choke, a small, broken sound. I placed the papers down and flipped to the printed statements. These are all the payments I made. You can come see them anytime. But listen carefully, from today on, I'm not paying a single cent more. You and Vanessa have 24 hours to do one simple thing. Apologize properly. If not, all support ends permanently. On the other end, I heard Vanessa cry, not in remorse, but in fear of losing her lifestyle. Michael sounded like the weight of the sky had fallen on him. Mom, you can't do this. I can't fix this on my own. Michael, I said softly yet firmly, I fixed everything my whole life. Now it's your turn. I paused, letting the next words land. If you see me as a burden, then you must learn to live without that burden. A long silence followed, then a slammed door, a yell, Michael calling after her. I breathed in slowly. My kitchen glowed with soft morning light. My coffee was still warm. For the first time, I felt free. My pain hadn't vanished, but it had hardened into resolve, into steel. For 3 years, I supported a family that never thanked me. I protected Michael's pride. I let them build an image of me as an endless resource. That ended this morning. I set down my cup and closed the folder. Sometimes, to stand firm, an older woman doesn't need anyone behind her. She just needs to say enough. And that morning, for the first time in 66 years, I did. Michael called 2 more times, but I didn't answer. They needed time to face themselves, to understand that everything in life has a price, including a mother's kindness. And in that silence, something became incredibly clear. I owed them nothing, but they owed me an apology I would never forget if it didn't come. I clicked the folder shut, a soft, decisive sound, like a door closing and another one opening, a door leading to a confrontation they never imagined I had the strength to walk into. I didn't have to wait long. Just before noon the next day, the sound of a car slamming its brakes echoed across my yard, sharp and dry like a warning. I pulled the curtain aside and looked out the window. Michael stepped out of the driver's seat, exhausted, his clothes wrinkled, his hair flat and oily like someone who hadn't slept all night. But Vanessa was different. She stomped her high heels on the tile steps of my porch, pushed open my front door without even knocking, as if this place belonged to her. We need to talk, Vanessa said, her voice sharp as a thin blade. Michael stood behind her, avoiding my eyes. I didn't invite them to sit right away. I wanted to see how they intended to begin this conversation, but clearly, apology wasn't in their vocabulary. Vanessa crossed her arms, tilted her head with challenge. You cut off the money without warning. That's unreasonable. I want to know why. I raised an eyebrow, swallowing a sigh. Why? You two don't see the reason. Michael awkwardly sat down on the sofa while Vanessa remained standing as if she needed the higher position to protect her crumbling ego. Mom, Michael said quietly, we really need you to explain. Suddenly all the payments stopped. I can't handle... I cut him off. You said suddenly? Michael, you don't remember what happened last night? Vanessa let out a mocking laugh. If you did this to prove you have power, it didn't work. We're not scared. I looked straight at her. Oh, then who's handling the frozen credit cards? Who's paying this month's mortgage? Lily's tuition that's waiting for a signature? Your SUV running out of gas on the road? Who's filling the tank? The confidence on Vanessa's face cracked. She shot Michael a look as if blaming him. I quietly pulled the red folder from the dining table and placed it in front of them. A solid thump filled the room. Good. Let me help you explain. I opened the folder. On the table were detailed statements of every expense from the past 3 years. Receipts, bank transfers, tuition bills, car insurance, home repairs, even the receipt for the leather jacket Vanessa bragged about on Instagram. I pushed a stack of papers toward them. From the milk Lily drinks every week to your Colorado trip, all of it, I paid. Michael reached out with shaking hands to pick up a sheet. Vanessa froze in place, her skin turning visibly pale. She tried to force a weak smile. This must be some misunderstanding. Michael never said you paid. Yes, I said evenly, because Michael was ashamed. My son has been lying to you for 3 years. Michael quickly shook his head, then dropped his hands, as if he no longer had the strength to deny it. Vanessa, I didn't have a choice. I just wanted you to think I was capable. I was afraid if you knew. What does that mean? Vanessa burst out, turning to me. Lily is just a kid. She talks nonsense. Don't use a child's words to make things difficult for us. I leaned back in my chair, watching her for a long moment. Children repeat what adults teach. She didn't come up with the phrase, useless old freeloader on her own. You might forget that kids hear more than adults think. Vanessa went silent. Her face shifted into an odd shade of red, part anger, part shame, part fear. I took a soft breath and said clearly, you two said you needed to talk, so do I. First, bring Lily in here. Immediately, Vanessa reacted as if touched on an open wound. No, she's not involved. She's sitting in the car. Whatever you want to say it to us. I knew exactly what she was afraid of, that her daughter's own words would expose the attitude she had been hiding. Vanessa, I said, my voice light but sharp, a child only repeats how their parents treat others. If we don't talk to Lily now, she'll grow up thinking it's normal to insult her grandparents. She clenched her teeth. I'm not letting you brainwash my daughter. Michael raised a hand as if to calm both sides. Mom, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I shouldn't have laughed. I shouldn't have stayed quiet. No, Michael. I looked straight at my son. You didn't just laugh. You allowed all of it. You let your daughter believe cruelty is acceptable. You taught her that through your silence. Michael lowered his head, his shoulders collapsing as if years of weight had fallen onto him all at once. Vanessa crossed her arms and lifted her chin. Fine. If you want us to apologize to get the money back, we're not doing it. We can handle things ourselves. We don't need your charity. Oh? I tilted my head, unable to hide my smile. Handle things? Vanessa, do you know how much is left in Michael's account right now? $37. Your credit card is 2 cycles overdue. Your car loan has the highest interest rate tier. The bank is about to send a second foreclosure notice. How exactly do you plan to handle this? Her face flamed red. We'll manage. I can get a better job. I'm not dependent on anyone. I looked directly into her proud eyes and said softly, Vanessa, you've been dependent on me for 3 years without knowing it. And the worst part is, you thought you were above everyone else. Michael rubbed his forehead, his voice breaking. Mom, I'm sorry. It's my fault. I wanted to look strong, to be the provider. I didn't think it would turn into this. I just wanted Vanessa to be proud of me. I placed one hand on the table, staying silent for a few seconds before speaking. If you want respect, you must live like someone worthy of it. You can't build love on my money. I pushed the folder toward them. Now, here is my final choice. 24 hours. Either you apologize to me, clearly, sincerely, without excuses, or you two handle everything on your own starting today. Vanessa shot to her feet. I don't need that kind of money. I will take care of my family. I won't let you control us. She grabbed Michael's hand. Let's go. We'll show her we don't rely on anyone. But her steps trembled, and Michael looked like a rope pulled from both ends, between his wife's pride and the truth he couldn't outrun. When the door slammed shut, my house fell silent. Only the wind rustled through the trees outside. I sat down, resting my hands in my lap, letting my breath settle. No more hurt, no more humiliation, just one strange feeling, the feeling of someone who had restored order. I knew Vanessa wouldn't let go of her pride easily, and Michael was sinking into the dark space between shame and fear of losing everything. But I also knew one one certain thing. This storm was only beginning. Some winds can only be understood when they rip the roof off someone's house. And for Michael and Vanessa, that roof had never been more fragile. That afternoon, as the sunlight fell behind the pine trees, my phone rang again. But this time, it wasn't Michael's frantic calls. On the screen was a name that softened something inside me. Jonathan. My younger son living in Seattle, almost a 4-hour flight away. Jonathan had always been the grounded one, quiet but thoughtful, and most importantly, he had always treated me with the kind of kindness that didn't need to be shown off. I answered, "Mom?" His voice was low, touched with concern. What happened with Michael? He called me past midnight, crying. I've never heard him like that. I closed my eyes and exhaled. I had prepared myself to retell the story, but hearing Jonathan ask with genuine care made the ache inside me stir again, like a wound brushed too soon. "Do you want to hear both sides or the truth?" I asked, trying to keep my tone steady. Jonathan didn't hesitate. "I always want the truth from you." So I told him everything, from Lily's insult, Michael's laugh, the entire family walking away without realizing how deeply they had cut me. I told him about the usual payment text, about Vanessa barging into my house as if I owed them answers. I told him how neither of them apologized, only demanded to know why I had unreasonably cut the money. Silence stretched across the line. Then Jonathan spoke, slow and measured. "Mom, I really don't know what to say. I had no idea Lily said that, but what Michael did, I'm so disappointed." His voice tightened. "I don't blame you for cutting support. Honestly, I think you should have done it a long time ago." I gave a faint, sad smile. "I know, but I always thought Michael needed time, needed the feeling of being supported to stand tall." "That's not what happened, Mom," Jonathan said immediately. "He relied on you to maintain an image for his wife. He relied on you to build a life he didn't earn. It's not support anymore. It's dependency." I went still. Hearing my own son say it plainly made me face a truth I had avoided for years. Jonathan continued, "To be honest, Michael needs this shock to grow up, and you need the distance so you're not taken advantage of anymore." That sentence was like a light turning on inside me. "Jonathan, if Michael calls to borrow money, what would you do?" I asked. Partly curious, partly needing to know if I could trust at least one son completely. Without a second thought, Jonathan replied, "I won't give him any. Doing that would just enable him, and I won't be part of hurting you more." Maybe I had been waiting years to hear someone in my family say that. I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the front yard, where the first yellow leaves of the season had begun to fall. "Thank you," I said softly, "not because you're taking my side, but because you see something I took too long to see." Jonathan's voice gentled. "Mom, you never asked for anything except respect. If someone can't give you that, they don't deserve your help." A warm wave swept through my chest. "If Michael needs emotional support, I'll still be here," I said. "But no more financial help. No more carrying everything while they sit back." Jonathan exhaled, as if releasing something he had been holding. "I support you completely. And, Mom, don't soften your heart again. You've been through enough." I let out a light laugh. "You're afraid I'll soften?" "Mom," Jonathan chuckled, "for the past 30 years, you've never understood the meaning of the word harsh. But sometimes, setting boundaries is the healthiest way to love." I stayed quiet, not because I was hurt, but because my son had just spoken straight into a part of me I didn't know anyone understood. "Don't worry," I said. "This time, I'm not stepping back." After I hung up, I sat for a long time, listening to the ticking clock in the living room. For the first time in days, I didn't feel alone in this battle. At least one of my sons was truly grown, balanced, thoughtful, and capable of love that didn't bleed others dry. I began rethinking everything. The years I spent trying to shield Michael, not realizing I was weakening him. I realized this family didn't just need a small wake-up call. They needed an upheaval, and cutting financial support was only the first stone dropped into the water. That evening, after a simple dinner of chicken soup and toasted toasted bread, I went upstairs and opened the wooden cabinet my late husband left behind. Inside were old folders, business plans from 20 years ago, documents I had intended to organize many times but couldn't because the memories felt too heavy. I pulled out each folder: savings accounts, shares of the small real estate company my husband and I started when Michael was just out of college, papers I had never shown either of my sons because I had wanted them to stand on their own feet. But now I needed to review everything, not to help Michael or Vanessa, but to prepare the next step for myself. I sorted through each sheet, placing them back in order, feeling as though I was reorganizing my life, a life I had let others steer for far too long. When the night breeze drifted in through the window, rustling the curtains, I paused and looked out at the small forest behind my house, and I understood. For the first time in years, I was reclaiming control. Not control over anyone else, but control over my own life. Something age often tricks people into believing they've lost. I closed the last folder and rested my hand on its cover. I could feel it clearly. I was stepping into a new chapter, not with a broken heart, but with strength forged from the very wounds that once cut me. Because sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones who unintentionally give us the greatest gift: awakening. The next morning, a little after 8 a.m., I received a video call from Michael, but before I could pick up, the call ended. Not even 10 seconds later, my phone rang again. I knew this pattern. This was how my son called when he was truly panicking. I pressed accept. Michael's face appeared on the screen, gaunt, eyes red as if he had been crying or hadn't slept all night. "Mom," his voice broke. "Vanessa, she left." I didn't act surprised. I set my tea down, kept my voice steady. "Tell me more clearly." Michael swallowed hard, as if his throat were filled with gravel. "Vanessa found out my real salary." He let out a strained laugh, a painful, defeated sound. "Turns out I only make enough to cover electricity, water, and some groceries. The moment you stopped helping, everything fell apart." I stayed quiet, not out of judgment, but because I wanted him to see his own reality with his own eyes. Michael continued, his voice trembling. "She said straight to my face, she didn't get married to live with a failure." Those words stabbed into my ears, even though they weren't aimed at me. I knew that kind of pain. When someone you once trusted sees you as less than your true worth. I sighed softly. "Where is Vanessa now?" "She packed her things last night, took her whole wardrobe, makeup, even the travel suitcase, then pulled Lily along. They're staying at her parents' house." His voice cracked. "Lily, she cried, but Vanessa said it was temporary, until I can prove I can provide." I closed my eyes, feeling my heart squeezed gently by an old, tired hand. Loving your child is instinct, but love doesn't mean rescuing. Michael collapsed into a chair, hands on his head. "Mom, I lost my family." It was probably the first time in my life I had seen my son so bare. No pride, no bravado, no illusions of success. Just a 42-year-old man standing in the ruins. He played a part in building. I kept my tone calm, but never cold. "Michael, sometimes the truth itself will choose who deserves to stay." He looked up, eyes pleading for someone to pull him out of the hole he had fallen into. "What do you mean, Mom?" I said slowly, "the people who stay when you have nothing are the people who are truly your family." Michael went silent for a long time. His breathing blended into the hum of the ceiling fan behind him. Then he spoke, voice breaking like a defeated child. "All this time, I really thought Vanessa loved me." "You were mistaken," I replied gently, but without avoiding the truth. "Vanessa loved the lifestyle she thought you had." Michael clenched his fists, lips trembling. "I created that illusion so I wouldn't be looked down on, so I could keep my family together." I looked straight into his eyes, not to scold, but to show him what I had seen long before he did. "You can't keep a family together with borrowed money or the money I sent in secret. All you did was delay the moment they saw who you really are." Those words made Michael drop his gaze, his shoulders shaking. I didn't step forward to comfort him. I knew he had to go through this moment, had to feel the full weight of loss if he ever wanted to stand back up. After a long pause, he whispered, "Mom, all of this happened because I depended on you for too long, didn't it?" I pressed my lips together. "Yes, but it wasn't just you. Part of it was my fault, too. I tried to shield you too much, afraid you would stumble." He looked up, confused and wounded. "Mom, but that ends now," I said firmly. "From now on, you have to live your life. If there are mistakes to fix, you fix them with your own two hands." Michael froze like a statue. That afternoon, I received another message from him. "Mom, the house has nothing. I've never paid a full month of bills myself. The electric bill, the internet bill, the Honda that needed gas using Vanessa's card, which was now frozen, Lily needing lunch money for school, the fridge containing only a carton of milk that had expired 2 days ago." I read each line, and my heart tightened. But instead of rushing in to save him, I replied with one sentence. "This is the first time you're living according to your real income. Consider it your starting point." 10 minutes later, Michael called again. "Mom, I'm so scared." I answered with the low, steady voice of a woman who had lived long enough to understand pain and strength. "Fear isn't shameful. Avoiding responsibility is." On the other end, Michael exhaled heavily. I'll try. I don't want to be the person Vanessa described." "Then prove the opposite," I said. "Start by paying your own bills." I heard him flipping through messy papers. "Mom, there are too many. I don't know which ones to prioritize. Electricity, water, food. If you can't pay the mortgage on time, call the bank and negotiate. Everything else, cut back. You don't need to live like before anymore." Michael was silent for a long moment before asking, voice small like a child waking from a nightmare, "Mom, will Vanessa come back?" I answered truthfully, without adding false hope. "If she loves you, she will. If she loves money, she won't." There are sentences that help people survive pain by touching the deepest part of it. That was one of them. That night, Michael sent the first screenshot of a bill he had paid himself. On the screen were the words, "Payment successful." For the first time in years, my son had done it on his own. I stared at the screen for a long moment, feeling as if I were watching a child take his first steps after refusing to walk for years. I only replied briefly, "Good job." No coddling, no exaggerated praise. Michael needed to learn that independence was normal, not a heroic achievement to be rewarded. In the following days, I watched his life from a distance. A house once full of noise now stood quiet. No more clicking heels from Vanessa, no more expensive perfume lingering in the hallway, no more Lily arguing with friends on the brand new iPad I had once financed. In that emptiness, I saw my son truly growing, slowly, painfully, but undeniably. I understood one thing clearly. Breaking the dependencies I had accidentally created over the past 3 years would not be easy, but it had to be done. And the collapse of Michael's marriage was simply the inevitable consequence. Vanessa never loved Michael. She loved the income she believed he had. She loved the new car I bought. She loved the big house I paid for. She loved the generosity she assumed came from her husband. Now everything was exposed. Now the truth stood between them like a mirror no one could avoid, and I would no longer interfere. Sometimes being a mother isn't about catching your child. Sometimes being a mother means letting your son fall, so he learns how to stand on his own trembling legs. That weekend, Michael came to my house no longer in total collapse. He still looked tired, but there was a spark of life in his eyes, as if he had finally taken a full breath after years of suffocating himself. "Mom," he began as I poured tea, "I think you're right. Maybe I've never really grown up." I looked at my son, truly looked at him, for the first time without the mask he always wore. No pretending to be strong, no chasing an image of success he had invented. I gently placed my hand on his shoulder. "You're beginning now, Michael, and I'm proud of you. Not because you're perfect, but because you're willing to face yourself." He lowered his head. "I'll do my best." I smiled. "Then this is only the first chapter of your new life." I invited Michael over on a quiet Sunday morning. Outside, red maple leaves dropped one by one, sounding like soft whispers of autumn. I stood in the kitchen making coffee, feeling an unusual calm. I knew the conversation about to happen would change the course of my son's life, and it was also a key step in the plan I had been quietly preparing preparing for days. When Michael arrived, he knocked very gently as if afraid to disturb me, a hesitance I rarely saw in him. "Mom, I'm here," he said as he stepped inside, hands in his pockets, walking like a man who had just come out of a storm. I pointed to the old wooden table near the window, where I had placed a green folder, clipped with a bright brass fastener. "Sit down, Michael. I have something to give you." He looked at the folder as if it were a foreign object. "What is it, Mom?" "Open it." Michael slowly unfastened the clip. His eyes moved across the first page, then suddenly widened as if someone had pulled his hair. "Contract of employment, Brooks and Avery Real Estate Group." He looked up, mouth slightly open but unable to speak. I nodded. "That is your father's and my company." Michael froze. "But Dad was just a lumber mill worker?" I saw the innocence in his question. The truth was, my husband and I had hidden that secret well for 2 decades. Not to deceive our children, but to protect them from growing up dependent on family wealth. "Your father worked at the mill until 2003, I explained slowly. "After that, he quit and focused on Brooks and Avery. We bought inexpensive lots during the recession, renovated old houses, rented them out, resold them, and kept building." Michael inhaled deeply, trying to process what he had just heard. I never knew." "That's right," I said, "because your father wanted you and Jonathan to build your own lives, not rely on inherited money, and I believed in that too." I rotated the folder toward him so he could see clearly. "You're 42 now. It's time you knew the truth." Michael looked down at the second page, a job description, Regional Property Manager, Western Division. Starting salary, a 6-figure number I knew he had never imagined. "Mom, why would you trust me with this, after everything I just put you through?" His voice shook, tangled with regret and disbelief. I didn't answer immediately. I looked at my son, a man walking into midlife with mistakes piled high like mountains, yet with a faint flicker of something still alive in his eyes, like a small ember refusing to die. "Michael," I finally said, "I'm not giving you this opportunity because you deserve it now, but because I believe you can become someone who deserves it later." He lowered his head, overwhelmed. "Mom, I don't even know how to thank you," but I lifted my hand to stop him. "This opportunity comes with a condition." Michael tensed. "What condition?" I folded my hands. On the table, my voice firm. "Vanessa is not to know." A deep silence sank into the room. Michael blinked, clearly stunned. "She can't know? But why?" I looked straight into his eyes. "Because I want to know the truth. I want to know whether your wife is with you because she loves you, or because she loves the lifestyle you pretended to have. If Vanessa comes back thinking you only earn your old salary, you will know how real her feelings are." Michael sat still like a statue. Then he reluctantly nodded. "Mom, I understand. Good. This is a test for both of you, yourself and your wife, and I will not interfere." I pulled another sheet of paper from the folder and pushed it toward him. "This contract clearly states your responsibilities, your benefits, and the termination clause if you fail to perform." Michael read through it, then straightened his back like someone who had just regained a long-lost sense of pride. "If I don't do well," he began. "Then there will be no second chance," I continued. "I already told you, this is your last opportunity." Michael drew a long breath, lowering his head, his eyes filled with a rare determination. "Mom, I won't disappoint you again." I looked at my son and felt as if time were looping. I saw my husband's shadow behind him, the man who always believed Michael had great potential, only he had never stepped off the safety chair others placed beneath him. Perhaps if he were still alive, he would have given our son this chance too. Michael stood up, holding the folder to his chest like he was carrying a priceless gift. His voice softened, but was filled with gratitude. "Mom, thank you for still believing in me, even when I don't believe in myself." I smiled gently, though inside me was an ocean of emotion. "From now on, let your actions answer everything. I will no longer hold you up. Build your own life, Michael." He nodded, firmer than ever before. I watched him as he walked toward the door, his shoulders still heavy, but his steps carrying the strength of a man who finally understood his responsibility. When the door closed softly behind him, I stood up, walked to the window, and watched his figure disappear behind the maple trees. A cold breeze swept past, lifting a few yellow leaves into the air. I knew clearly I had just set the key gear of my plan into into the correct position. Michael would grow up. Vanessa would show her true nature, and my family, after years tangled like a ball of yarn, would finally reveal who truly belonged to one another. I whispered to myself, a small promise to the husband I lost. He's about to step into a new chapter, Richard. This time, he has to stand on his own 2 feet. Michael left my house with determined eyes, but I knew another battlefield awaited him. Not the new job, but the confrontation with his own marriage. I didn't interfere. I simply sat by the window, watching his silhouette fade behind the trees, my fingers tightening around the cooling cup of tea. A mother must sometimes step back to see clearly who walks out of her child's life and who clings on only for personal gain. By late afternoon, as the sky shifted into deep blue, Michael texted me, "I'm going to Vanessa's parents' house. I want to tell them about the job." I replied with just one sentence, "Tell the truth." From what Michael later described, I could picture the scene inside Vanessa's parents' grand home, a suburban mansion where everything appeared more glamorous than it truly was. Vanessa had always bragged about her stable background, using it as a shield to belittle my family. Michael stood in the large foyer. Vanessa sat cross-legged on the sofa, her phone vibrating non-stop with social media notifications. She looked up, and the moment she saw Michael, she frowned. "What are you doing here?" Vanessa's voice was sharp as a blade. Michael took a deep breath. "I have news about my job." Vanessa immediately sat upright. "A new job? Good, tell me. How much is the salary? Not how is the job, not are you doing okay? Just how much is the salary?" Michael said that in that moment he realized this question had repeated itself for 10 years of marriage. He had simply never heard it clearly before. "I was appointed regional manager. The salary," he swallowed. "The starting salary is how much?" Vanessa cut him off, her voice harsh like someone gasping for air. "It's an amount enough for us to live comfortably. Not rich, but stable. Say the number." Michael finally had to read the figure aloud, a relatively high salary for any middle-class man. But when Vanessa heard it, she shot up as if someone had slapped her. "Not enough!" Her scream echoed from the living room to the backyard. Michael froze. "Vanessa, this is my real salary. It's a job I have to work hard for." "Not enough for me to live," she yelled. "Lily has always gone to private school. I'm used to designer brands. I'm used to weekend spas and dining out. You think that amount is enough?" Michael said that at that moment he felt something inside him crack, something that had been fragile for years. "Vanessa." He searched for words, but his mouth was dry as sand. "We can adjust." "Adjust?" She laughed coldly. "Adjust to live like poor people? What can you do besides drag me down?" Lily was sitting in the corner with her doll, her big blue eyes wide. The 9-year-old didn't understand why her mother was so angry. She just looked between her parents with a confusion that could break any heart. Michael said that in his daughter's eyes, he saw something he had never seen before: fear. "Mommy, did Daddy do something wrong?" Lily asked softly. Vanessa waved her off irritably. "Be quiet, the adults are talking." Michael felt his heart plunge into a deep pit. "Vanessa, you can't talk like this in front of her." "You think I care?" she snapped. "You have no money. That's it. I didn't get married to be the wife of a failure." That sentence was like a hammer smashing every illusion Michael had clung to. He said that in that moment, he saw their entire 10-year marriage play back like a slow-motion reel. The cold nights when she barely spoke to him, the dinners where she never asked how much he had earned, the vacations she bragged about to her friends. Michael pays for everything. Michael didn't argue, didn't beg, didn't fight back. He simply watched his wife finish packing the last 2 bags, then pull Lily to her feet. "We're going to my parents for a while." Vanessa said it like announcing the weather. "When you can prove your worth, I'll talk to you again." Then she walked out, leaving the door closing behind her like a final punctuation mark. That night, Michael called me, his voice drained. "Mom, you were right. Vanessa, she doesn't love me." A long silence. "She only loves the life she thought was mine." I didn't speak immediately. I let him sit with the silence, the kind that speaks louder than advice. Finally, I asked, How do you feel? I feel empty. His voice trembled, but I also feel like I'm finally seeing the real path in front of me. I close my eyes, taking a slow breath. Michael, sometimes the person who hurts you the most is the one who teaches you the most important lesson. Vanessa just showed you the truth you avoided for years. I walked to the window where the soft amber streetlights glowed against the sidewalk. From now on, you don't have to pretend anymore. You don't have to play the role of a successful man just to keep a marriage that was never real. Michael's voice broke. Mom, I don't understand how you can stay so calm. I let out a small laugh because I already knew the outcome and because I've been watching from a distance. What do you mean? I mean, my son, the storm with Vanessa is only beginning. She still doesn't know what I know. Michael went silent. He didn't know what I was referring to, and I wasn't planning to tell him yet. I answered lightly, like a soft breeze with the sharpness of a thin blade, because you are learning to face the truth, and Vanessa is about to face hers. Meaning I am letting the wind blow in the right direction. I heard Michael let out a long breath, but this time it wasn't the sound of defeat. It was the sound of a man stepping out of the shadow he had created himself. When the call ended, I stood before the mirror and looked at my face, lined with wrinkles, filled with stories, shaped by storms I had survived. I smiled. At last, every piece of my plan was moving into place. I was never someone who sought conflict, but I never allowed anyone, not even a daughter-in-law, to diminish my dignity. If Vanessa believed I would rescue her again, she was wrong, because this time I wasn't carrying anyone's burden. This time I was only directing the wind and letting the storm put every person exactly where they belonged. In the days after the confrontation between Michael and Vanessa, I kept my routine, waking early, brewing a cup of black coffee, and sitting by the window overlooking the small forest behind my house. But my heart no longer felt heavy. Once you see the true nature of things, your mind becomes strangely clear. I knew Vanessa would soon face the consequences she chose, and I knew I was ready for the next step. Not out of revenge, but out of fairness. And to give my son a lesson he would never forget, I called Brenda, my personal attorney for 18 years, a woman so sharp she could predict an opponent's next 3 moves just by reading a single line of a report. Brenda, I said, I need you to investigate someone's finances. His name is Derek Monroe. Brenda paused for a second, longer than usual. Vanessa's father, correct? Any particular reason? I want to know the real picture of that family, I replied, as clearly as possible. Brenda asked no further questions. We had worked together long enough to understand that the things I didn't say were the ones that mattered. 3 days later, exactly at 7 p.m., the time Brenda always sent important reports, my phone lit up with a PDF file over 100 pages long. I opened it and read line by line, item by item, number by number, until my heart grew still. Derek Monroe's convenience store chain was drowning in debt, unpaid employee wages, unpaid suppliers, unpaid taxes, and most importantly, placed under expanded investigation by the IRS. Brenda added a short note. Evelyn, he may face prison in 6 to 9 months. I sat in my chair for a long time, not out of shock, but because every missing puzzle piece had finally come together. Vanessa always bragged about how successful her father was, but it turned out her entire family lived off a thin coat of outward glamour, one that was now peeling away. They were no better than Michael at this moment. Perhaps even worse. The next morning, I sent the entire file to Vanessa anonymously. A short email, no signature, with only one sentence. The truth is not always what it appears to be. I didn't have to wait long. That afternoon, Brenda texted me, Vanessa just contacted another lawyer. She's panicking now. I smiled. Not out of satisfaction, just the feeling that everything was unfolding according to its own logic. No one can use money to look down on others, especially when that money does not actually exist. 2 days later, while I was watering the plants in the yard, a shiny black SUV stopped at my gate. I looked from a distance and immediately recognized the man stepping out. An expensive gray suit, a slightly crooked tie, dark circles under his eyes from lack of sleep. Derek Monroe. He, the one who once looked down on me at Michael's birthday party. The one who said, Michael's family should learn to strive harder. The one who called me an unemployed old woman living off her son. Today, he stood outside my gate, his hands clasped tightly together. I let him wait 4 minutes, not for revenge, but so he would understand that today, courtesy was something he needed to relearn from the beginning. When I walked out to open the gate, Derek immediately bowed his head. Mrs. Evelyn, please give me a few minutes. His voice trembled, completely different from his former arrogance. I'm listening, I said, keeping my tone calm. Derek took a deep breath. I'm asking you to help Michael and Vanessa reconcile. My daughter, she's falling apart. Everything happened too fast. I know she hasn't behaved properly, but please, give them a chance. I folded my arms, leaning lightly against the gate. You came to ask me that? After everything your family has said to me all this time? Derek bit his lip, lowering his head even further. I know. I was wrong. I misjudged you. But now is not the time to talk about the past. I just hope you can open your heart a little. Open my heart? I repeated, tilting my head slightly. An interesting phrase, especially coming from someone who's in trouble with the IRS. Derek turned pale. Clearly he understood that I knew the truth. I didn't come here to argue. He tried to remain composed. I came to beg. Vanessa will collapse if her marriage falls apart, and Lily as well. I let the silence stretch. Silence is what makes people reveal the truth. Finally, I said, all right, I'll sit down and talk, but the rules are set by me. Derek looked at me, his expression mixed with relief and fear. Thank you. I appreciate it. I neither nodded nor smiled. I simply turned, opening the gate just enough. Go home and rest. When I'm ready, I'll contact you. Derek nodded repeatedly, then hurried back to his car, as if standing in front of me was a weight too heavy for him to bear any longer. When the SUV left the neighborhood, I stood in the yard, watching the maple leaves swirl in the autumn wind. Some people think retaliation means causing immediate pain, but I'm different. I don't need to do anything. I just need to let the truth reveal itself. And the truth now was very clear. Vanessa's family was not wealthy, not stable, not powerful. They were collapsing under the shiny facade they had built. Vanessa thought Michael was the burden, but now she knows. Her own family is the bottomless pit. I walked back into the house and closed the door, feeling the wind shifting. Not too strong, not too fast, but unmistakable. Vanessa's storm was only beginning, and I, the one who had once been dismissed, insulted, pushed away from my own son's dinner table, was now the one directing the wind, choosing the direction and the timing. I placed my hand on my chest, feeling the steady, quiet rhythm of someone who had lived through many years of hurt and finally understood that true strength is not in shouting. It lies in clarity, in knowing how to wait, and in knowing exactly when to push a door so that the entire room behind it collapses on its own. I gave a thin smile, almost invisible in the fading light. Vanessa, I whispered, not with malice, but like a prediction. You've only made it through the first round. I chose a late weekend afternoon to take the next step, not for revenge, but to restore the order this family had lost. The golden light of the day slanted through the living room window, casting a long shadow on the wooden floor. I stood there, glancing at the clock, my heart calm in a way that felt unusual. Exactly at 5 p.m., the doorbell rang. I opened the door and saw Vanessa standing on the porch. Her clothes were far simpler than before, her hair tied back hastily, her eyes swollen from sleepless nights. Beside her was Lily, wearing a pink backpack, holding tightly to her mother's arm. No trace remained of the prideful woman who once looked down on me. A cold wind swept past, fluttering the hem of Vanessa's shirt. We're here, Vanessa said softly, barely daring to meet my eyes. I stepped aside, offering space. Come in, we need to talk. Lily walked in first. The moment she saw me, she stopped, bowed deeply, and said in a trembling voice, Grandma, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that on Daddy's birthday. I didn't know. I didn't understand. Her voice broke, her eyes shimmering with tears. I stood still for a few seconds, letting myself feel the sincerity. This time, I knew the apology wasn't forced. Children have strong intuition. When a family falls apart, they sense who truly loves them. I gently placed my hand on her shoulder. Grandma knows. You were just influenced by adults. What matters is that now you know what's right. Lily rushed into my arms. A small hug, but enough to soften the heart of a woman who had survived many storms. Vanessa watched, her hands twisting together, her thumb rubbing her wedding ring until her skin turned white. She sat down, her shoulders slumped like someone who had lost her balance. She tried to speak, but the words came out like they were dragged over gravel. I'm sorry for what Lily said and for what I said to Michael. I sat across from her, my hand wrapped around a warm teacup. Are you sorry because you feel guilty or because you're desperate? The question made Vanessa freeze. 2 seconds of silence felt like a full minute. I saw her throat tighten as she swallowed. Both, she finally said, but I don't want my family to fall apart. I looked straight into her eyes, now void of all sharpness. Then we're going to reset the rules. I opened the folder on the table. Inside were 4 pages of documents Brenda had drafted with full clauses. This is the agreement between me, Michael, and you. I said each word clearly. 4 conditions. If you agree, I'll support your family's chance to reconcile. If not, you're on your own. Vanessa swallowed. I'm listening. I took a deep breath, then began. First, Michael must be financially independent. You may not control, demand, or require access to his paycheck. Vanessa's eyes widened. I don't control, but if he can't, I raised my hand to stop her. You need to learn to live within your real means. She bit her lip but nodded. Second, you will work part-time at my company. A basic position, basic pay, no special privileges. Vanessa shot up from her seat, nearly shouting, "You want me to work for you?" "No," I answered calmly. "I want you to relearn the value of labor. If you accept, I will pay you fairly. If not, you're free to find work elsewhere." Vanessa trembled with anger, but she didn't argue. Desperation has a way of teaching silence. Third, Lily must apologize publicly before the family. Lily looked up, worried. I stroked her hair. "Not to embarrass you, to teach you responsibility even as a child." Lily nodded hard. "I'll do it. I'll say sorry to Daddy in front of everyone." I smiled at her, a smile I rarely gave to adults. "Fourth," I said, turning to Vanessa, "you must also apologize publicly. No excuses, no deflecting, no blaming everything on Michael." Vanessa's face drained of color like I had asked her to step off a cliff. "You want me to humiliate myself in front of the family?" "No," I replied. "I want you to learn humility, and I want Michael to see that you are truly changing, not because of money." The air grew heavy. Only the ticking of the wall clock filled the room, reminding Vanessa that her time was running out. Finally, Vanessa's hands dropped, and she sank back into the chair. "I agree." Her voice was as soft as the wind. I agree to everything. I didn't show triumph. I simply turned to the last page of the folder. "This is a binding contract. There are penalties if you break any of the 4 conditions." I placed the pen in front of her. Vanessa stared at it for a long time, her hand shaking so badly the cap clicked against the table. She signed, slowly, each stroke seeming to pull the air out of her chest. Once she finished, Lily ran to me, wrapping her little arms around my waist. "Grandma, I'm really sorry. I love Grandma." I bent down to hug her back. It was a hug I hadn't known I needed. I looked at Vanessa. "You know, I don't hate you. I never did. I only hated how you treated my son. But today, you have a chance to change. And so do I." Vanessa lowered, her head, her hair falling forward to hide half her face. I'll do it right. I promise. Promise. A simple word, but when spoken by someone who had lived pridefully her whole life, it weighed more than metal. I stood up, gathered the documents, and said, "Get ready. We're going to hold a family gathering. There, everyone will hear the sincere apologies, and they will witness our changes." Vanessa looked up, anxious. "When?" "Saturday evening." "That's so soon. You'll manage," I cut in, "because that is when the real test begins." I glanced at Lily, who was still holding her mother's hand. "This family has a chance to heal, but it must start the right way." I turned and walked toward the kitchen, placing my hand on the wooden counter, feeling each grain the same way I felt the journey I had walked. in my heart, a quiet thought rose. The queen had fallen, but a family can rebuild if they learn to bow at the right time. I knew the public battle still lay ahead, but I was ready, and this time I would be the one redefining the word family. Saturday evening arrived faster than I expected. All day long, I was busy preparing the garden, hanging strands of warm yellow lights along the wooden fence, setting up an extra long table with a white cloth, placing hydrangea vases I had bought at the morning farmer's market. I wanted the space warm enough for emotions to be expressed without anyone feeling judged. By 7 p.m., the lights were on and the whole garden glowed with a soft, summer-gathering kind of warmth. But no one was comfortable. The atmosphere was tight as a stretched string. Michael's siblings were there. Jonathan had flown in from Seattle, standing beside me like a quiet anchor. Vanessa's family also came, looking awkward and guarded. Her mother pulled her coat tight around her, and her father, Derek, stood still, his face heavy as stone. I watched everything in silence. Then Lily stepped out. She wore the light blue dress I gave her last year. Her small hands were clenched, her lips trembling, but her eyes, those eyes shone with the courage of a child who had gone through more upheaval than any little girl should. I gave her a small nod, and she nodded back. Lily took a deep breath, then turned toward the whole family. I'm sorry for what I said at Daddy's birthday. Her voice shook like a thread pulled too tight. I said Grandma was a freeloader, but I didn't understand. I just repeated Mommy's words. I was wrong, really wrong. Her voice tightened. Grandma, I'm truly sorry. The whole garden went silent, quiet enough to hear the wind move through the maple leaves. Then Lily burst into tears, a clear, piercing cry, painful but not shameful, the cry of a child beginning to understand responsibility. I walked over and held her. Grandma forgives you, and Grandma is proud of you. Suddenly, behind us, the family began to clap. Not loud applause, soft, small, but sincere. I saw Michael's eyes turn red. Jonathan touched my shoulder gently. Even Vanessa's mother bowed her head. But everyone's attention shifted when Vanessa stepped forward. I had never seen her like this. No glossy nails, no elegant silk dress. Vanessa stood there in an old sweater and simple jeans, her face unable to hide exhaustion. She walked toward me slowly, like someone carrying the weight of an entire world. Then, before anyone could react, Vanessa sank to her knees. A wave of whispers rippled across the yard. Her parents froze. Michael was stunned, and I stood still, looking straight at her. Vanessa's voice came out hoarse and slow. Each word dragged from the deepest part of her humiliation. Evelyn, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the years I was ungrateful, disrespectful, and hurtful to you. I'm sorry I let my eyes be blinded by money and pride. I'm sorry for treating Michael like a burden. Her shoulders shook as if they might break. I know. I've done so much wrong. I want to make things right. I want to be a better mother to Lily and a grateful wife to Michael. Please, forgive me. I heard someone inhale sharply behind me. Clearly her parents had never imagined seeing their daughter kneel before anyone, let alone before me. The shame on their faces said everything. I let the silence stretch. Then I leaned down and placed my hand on her shoulder. Stand up. She looked up, eyes red and wet. I will accept this apology, I said, if it comes with action. Words aren't enough, but today I see a different Vanessa. I helped her rise. Once she was standing, Michael stepped forward and placed a hand on her shoulder. She grabbed his hand like someone trying to reclaim a support she had lost long ago. Michael turned to me. His eyes were warm, a warmth like being reborn, as if his heart, buried for years under pressure, shame, and forced strength, had finally found air again. Mom, his voice cracked. Thank you. I didn't answer, but I knew. Everything was moving in the right direction. The gathering continued, but it was completely different now. No more avoidance. No more condescending looks from Vanessa's family. No more invisible wall between the two sides of the family. Jonathan chatted with Derek. For the first time, without stiffness, Lily ran around the yard, her laughter ringing like the sound of hope. Vanessa helped me serve the food, her hands still trembling a bit, but her eyes calmer than before. As she set a tray of tartlets on the table, she whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on us." I looked at her for a long moment. "Thank you," I replied, "for having the courage to change." At the end of the night, when everyone had left, I stood alone in the garden, watching the strands of yellow lights flicker like the house's gentle breathing. I felt something in the air that I hadn't seen in my family for a long time. Warmth, respect, gratitude. But what made me happiest wasn't the apologies or the hugs. It was what was quietly beginning to grow. A lesson about self-respect, a lesson about responsibility, a lesson about the true value of a family. I looked up at the night sky where a few scattered stars were glowing. In that moment, I thought of my husband, the one who had gone before me, the one who once believed our family would find its way back someday. I whispered softly, "Richard, do you see it? Everything is finding its place again. You'd be proud of us." And I knew. Tonight, a new chapter of my family had begun. 3 months passed so quickly that sometimes I had to ask myself whether everything that happened was real or just a long dream. A dream where all the broken pieces were gathered and rearranged into something new, not perfect, but stronger. The change came from the smallest things, and those small things slowly pulled my entire family in a new direction. Michael called me almost every night not to ask for money, but to share his work updates with the quiet pride of a man standing steadily for the first time on his own ability. "Mom, today I closed the duplex in Tacoma." "Mom," my supervisor praised how well I handled the Western Division. "Mom, this month I paid every bill myself." I sat at the kitchen table listening to him, my heart light as early season wind. No more desperate clinging, no more shame, no more slumped shoulders waiting for rescue. Michael, the son who once lived inside a shell of pride and fear of failure, was truly growing up at 42. I silently knew my husband Richard would be smiling with pride. And Vanessa, if someone had told me 3 months ago that my daughter-in-law could become a woman who listens, who thanks, and who corrects herself, I would never have believed it, but I saw it with my own eyes, little by little. She came to my company on time every day, even if it was only a part-time customer service job. In the first days, her hands shook when customers complained, but just weeks later, I saw her guiding new clients, her eyes no longer arrogant, but calm and patient. One afternoon, Vanessa walked into my office while I was reviewing the quarterly report. "Mom," she hesitated, "thank you because of this job. I feel useful." I looked at her for a moment. Her face had less makeup, but it was more beautiful because of its honesty. "You did it yourself," I said. "All I did was push a door open." Vanessa gave a soft laugh, her eyes a bit red but full of a gratitude I had never seen in her. Lily was the biggest surprise of all. She came to my house every weekend bringing a pink apron with a cat on it that she insisted on wearing in the kitchen. She learned how to slice carrots, whisk eggs, and season salt with the kind of careful seriousness that was almost funny. But what touched me most was the sentence she said almost every week. "Grandma, I love being here. I feel peaceful." A 9-year-old saying peaceful with such sincerity is rare. I knew she could feel the difference in how I treated her. No pressure, no scolding, no tension, just quiet air, the soft sound of chopping vegetables, the smell of baked goods mixing with peppermint tea. And I realized I needed those moments with Lily more than I thought. As for Derek Monroe, Vanessa's father, the truth finally caught up to him. News of the IRS expanding its investigation spread quickly among the small business community in his area. 2 stores had to temporarily close. Another was sued by a supplier for unpaid invoices. Derek, who once held his head high in front of me, now quietly texted Vanessa, "Evelyn's son and daughter-in-law are the only ones helping us keep any shred of dignity." And then, one rainy afternoon, Vanessa came to my house, her eyes still swollen. "Mom," she said, "if you hadn't investigated and sent the documents early, we don't know what would have happened to my family. I thank you for saving us." I didn't take credit. I simply placed my hand over hers. Whether I saved you or not doesn't matter. What matters is that you learned what you needed to learn. Vanessa lowered her head. Yes, in those 3 months, I realized something precious. I no longer felt used. No one came knocking to ask for money. No one said disrespectful or belittling things to me. No one dumped responsibility on my shoulders and walked away. They came to ask my opinion, for guidance, to share small joys, big worries, or simply to sit in the kitchen and listen to me brew tea. For the first time in many years, I felt like I was in the right place. Not the family's bottomless wallet, but the head of the family, the steady center, the one who brought experience and calm. Jonathan was the first to notice. On his most recent visit, he looked around the house, saw my children talking together, saw Vanessa clearing plates, saw Lily grinning as she placed spoons into dessert bowls, then turned to me. "Mom," he said, his voice full of emotion. "You did something most people can't. You brought the whole family back on track." I laughed. "Jonathan, I just did what needed to be done." But he shook his head. "No, you did more. I'm proud of you." My heart warmed as if someone had wrapped a soft wool scarf around me in winter. Then one morning, while I was watering the tomato trellis, I suddenly realized something simple but important. My life was finally peaceful. No more quiet sobs in my bedroom out of hurt. No more silent disappointment when opening messages filled with demands. No more feeling like a burden. I had learned to love myself before loving the people I cared for. And when I did that, my family learned to do the same. Finally, I sat down on the wooden chair in the backyard, watching sunlight filter through the leaves, listening to Lily's laughter drifting out from the kitchen. Michael was showing Vanessa how to cook the pasta dish he had just learned from a coworker. Jonathan was on his way, saying he would bring an apple pie. I wondered, in all the years I spent struggling and trying to hold everything together, had I ever imagined I would see this? A family that isn't perfect, but knows how to love the right way. A family that knows how to apologize, how to correct itself, how to rise again. A family where I no longer have to endure, but can actually enjoy. I leaned my head back slightly, closed my eyes, and said softly, "Richard, everything is finally okay." And I knew this wasn't just 3 months that changed their lives. It was 3 months that changed me. There were afternoons when I sat alone on the porch, watching the golden sunlight spill across the grass like a warm blanket stretching to the end of the yard. In that quiet, I often thought about the journey of the past few months, a journey that started from a humiliating birthday party, from a sentence spoken by a child I loved, and from the laughter of my own son. Just one moment that seemed meaningless, yet enough to open an entirely new door. I thought about the version of myself that day, standing silent in the middle of the laughter, chest tight as if being squeezed, heart so empty it felt numb. And I also thought about the me of now, calm, strong, understanding my own worth more clearly than ever. I, Evelyn Brooks, am no longer the old freeloader in anyone's eyes. Not because they changed what they called me, but because I changed myself. Looking back on the past 3 months, I understood something I never had the courage to face before. Sometimes, if we want others to grow, we have to let them hit bottom. We have to let them see the bare truth they've been avoiding. Michael needed to see his own weakness in order to stand on his own feet. Vanessa needed to lose what she thought was secure to understand the real value of family. Lily needed to learn that responsibility begins with even the smallest words. And I needed to learn to stop sacrificing unconditionally, because when you give too much without setting boundaries, love becomes a burden, and kindness, without limits, becomes a bridge for others to walk across without ever looking back. Now my family has changed. Not perfect, not always harmonious, but there is respect, there is listening, there is gratitude, something I once thought I would never receive from my own flesh and blood. Michael works hard every day, and sometimes just seeing him step out of his car with confidence makes my heart feel as light as the wind. He is no longer someone who only knows how to take, but a man who helps, who makes up for the past, who apologizes, and who repairs what is broken. Vanessa has learned the greatest lesson of her life, that a strong woman is not someone who demands, but someone who stands up after she falls. I don't need her to be perfect. I only need to see that she is genuinely trying, and I have seen that. And Lily, every weekend her laughter in my kitchen is the sound that makes my house feel young again, as if life itself wanted to give me a second chance to guide a child through love rather than through exhausting sacrifice. I look at my family and realize I am no longer pushed to the side. I am the keeper of the flame, the one who reminds them to be kind, the one who teaches them gratitude, something the younger generation often forgets. These days, the late years of my life have become wonderfully light. I have time to cook the dishes I enjoy, read books in the morning sun, tend to the lavender bushes in my yard, and listen to my children's and grandchildren's little stories without swallowing any hidden pain. No one knocks on my door asking for money. No one sees me as an obligation. No one forgets my presence. They come because they want me there, not because they need something from me. And for a mother, that is the greatest gift. I tell this story not to boast and not to blame anyone. I tell it because I know there are so many people out there like me, mothers, grandmothers, older women who are dismissed, overlooked, treated as old, unnecessary, or a burden. I want them to know no one has the right to treat you as something worthless, no matter who they are. Not your husband, not your child, not your daughter-in-law or son-in-law. If I, a 66-year-old woman who spent a lifetime sacrificing, can stand up and reclaim my voice, then you can too. You deserve love with boundaries. You deserve respect. You deserve to be heard. If my family can change, then yours can too. And now, as the story closes, I have only one thing left to say. If I could do it, you can do it. And I hope to hear your own story. Thank you for staying with me all the way to the final line of this story. I truly appreciate your presence, whether you're watching from the United States, Vietnam, or anywhere in the world. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever experienced a moment that woke you up the way mine did? If you enjoy stories like this, please like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next ones. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.